this morning. Lance, good to see you. Vicki, Sheila. We'll bring our meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have the agenda, minutes of the last meeting, and the financials that were sent out by electronic media. Are there any questions or discussions on any of that? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Good. We'll move forward with the agenda as is then. Public comment. Have any time for anybody like to say anything this morning? Vicki? Vicki, you want to talk? Come on.
I was trying to twist his arm.
Oh, all right. Well, apparently there's no public comment, so we'll move forward with the president's report. Lana.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Prospect 319 is Project Zodiac, and my dates are off. This should be April, not March, so that's Prospect 419. I'll make that correction, my apologies. And we submitted responded to a request for information that was distributed by the Kansas Department of Commerce on Friday. The project estimate, it's an industrial / manufacturing prospect, and the project is estimated to bring $20 million in capital investment. And Prospect 219, is an industrial project that we first met with on February 1st. We have provided them with sites. They have submitted an offer to purchase a site, one of the sites that we suggested to them. That project is estimated to be $40 million. We're waiting to hear back from the owners of that property to determine whether or not that's going to work. They have advised us that if that site is not, if their purchase offer is not accepted on that site, they will certainly consider additional sites, so we can provide them some additional sites if necessary. 10181 is an existing company looking into a new line of business. We have submitted sites for their review. We've heard no feedback from them.
How long do we keep stuff on? You know, we're October of 18.
If we know they're still working on it, we know they're still considering it, we typically leave it on
Okay.
our prospect list. If we don't hear anything from them for an extended period of time, I've actually visited with these folks on a very regular basis, so I know that they are still considering it.
Okay.
But there's really no update besides that they are still considering it. Upon the time that we are not getting any updates or any further feedback from them, we put it into a hiatus status, if you will, and if it reemerges, we certainly can pull it back out.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Project Birmingham, the prospect did visit the community again on April 17th. We hosted them. Fortunately, the Garden City Community College was able to make space available to us. We had really our entire community team in that room to present to them and visit with them about workforce and the various sites, utilities, etc. That project is estimated to be $400 million. We're anticipating that they will come to a decision we think at this point now within the very short order. Prospect 7181 was an industrial company that we've submitted some sites to. They have visited the sites in Finney County and will follow up with us. They're an industrial company that serves largely food manufacturing type businesses in the area. Prospect 418-2, we can now tell you, was Livestock Nutrition Center. That project has been through the tax abatement process and approved, and the memorandum of understanding has been entered into with the county to authorize that tax abatement for 20%, so long as they meet all of the capital investment and job creation that they estimated they would.
What was their estimated capital investment?
Just over $2 million. Project R&R is a Kansas Department of Commerce RFP. They've not sent us any additional updates, but the last update they have sent us was that it was still an active RFP.
Do they ever follow through in terms of saying, all right, these 20 cities responded, these 5 are still in play, or they just throw things out, send us information, and it goes in a hole until something happens?
I can't tell you exactly what happens on their end, but I can tell you what happens on our end. When we receive a request for information or a request for proposal, whichever it happens to be, we typically have 3 to 4 days in which to turn around that request. Those requests require significant information. They want sites, they want utility information to the sites. Phil is very well aware that we often reach out to them and say, we've got 24 hours to turn this around. We are fortunate in our office that we actually have, our team is able to actually compile everything with the exception of the utility information. We're also able to create very, very professional documents to represent those sites. So we do that, and we do that in a quick turnaround. In this situation, we actually had 4 days to submit, which was longer than normal, which is good. From there, once we've submitted it, we get a response from them that they've received our submittal. And with most of the prospects, that is the last thing we hear about them. For some time, when Pat George and Steve Kelly were Secretary and Deputy Secretary of Department of Commerce, the economic development professionals of the state requested that they submit a report out to us that said, we received this many, we worked with this many site consultants and we've sent it out and gotten so many responses or whatever. We've received one of those reports over the period of time that they were in their positions. But no, at this time we received nothing, no follow-up from them, nor can you find that as far as having been submitted to the legislature or to any other oversight body that makes it public anyway. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does. It just seemed like they asked you to jump through all the hoops, and then there's no hoop holder on the other end. So
One wonders, yes, I would agree. And I would tell you, I suppose there are those who would say, well, just quit responding. But quite frankly, specifically this project is one that is ideally suited for our community, would be a perfect location for them based on the information we received about their company. So we're not in a position to make that decision that we wouldn't respond to that in the hopes that this will be the one that goes somewhere. But we are also very intentional in which of those we choose to respond to. If it's simply something we can't accommodate in our community, we don't respond to those, obviously.
well, I would think with the new Secretary of Commerce who had an economic development background, that they would understand a little more how important some communication might be.
We certainly may see some changes, yes.
Hopefully.
We haven't received anything to date that would tell
Okay.
us that it will be handled differently, but we certainly could.
All right.
Pinkies, we have been working with them. They have outlasted, if you will, their temporary permit that the city granted them while they sought a permanent location. But we are helping them now with a lease negotiation, and I think they're gonna be able to get it secured, so.
They've been through 2 or 3 facilities that looked like they were gonna locate, and then
We've-
complication for one reason or another.
We've done a
they
lot
have
of work
not
on
worked,
their
yeah.
project, but we're gonna get them there, and then we're all gonna celebrate by having a Twisted
Sandwich.
Cristo, so that'll be good. Project Rochester is the Kansas and Campus, is what the city is referring it to. This is the First National Bank development alongside East Kansas Avenue. This really is the last developable corridor, if you will, inside of the bypass. So we're very excited to have it done. This is a very challenging, they were actually 2 parcels owned by different parties, one of the only hills in our commercial area, and certainly created some difficult development issues that came along with it. The primary one being drainage. You couldn't really develop one parcel without having the other parcel on board. So the fact that we were able to work with them and get them to secure both parcels into a full development, not only building their own facility, obviously, which will be a beautiful facility and welcomed in the community, but also creating the opportunity for additional commercial projects to locate with them.
So the plats are finalized and approved? or-
They have their tax increment financing package has been approved by the city commission, so they'll continue to work through their engineering and architectural drawings. And the tax increment finance district basically allows the city's infrastructure, which is the streets, the wastewater, water, electric, streetlights, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, all of those things that the city must have in order to accommodate the business. The TIF allows the private developer to pay for those items, but be reimbursed with those future tax revenues that wouldn't exist without the project. So instead of the city going out and saying, let's go develop this 20-acre parcel, let's put in streets and sidewalks and all those things with existing tax dollars and hope we can sell it to someone. Instead, we're saying, we'll let the private developer come to us, tell us they're interested in the project, and then we'll partner with them to ensure that that project can happen. The senior living community is up and running. They have their final licensing in place and they're still accepting new residents. We've been very pleased to see their social media presence. They've done a really nice job of really telling their story and keeping the community apprised of what's happening with the folks that live out there. Transload, we have submitted Garden City Industrial Park / Transload sites to 2 new prospects. As you guys are aware, the plan from the very beginning with the Transload was that we would develop it and obviously TP&L had wind component contracts that were going to keep it busy for quite some time. But beyond that, the anticipation has always been that we would market it to manufacturing products. It's very close, obviously, to our wastewater treatment plant, to the sanitary landfill. All of the utilities are very nearby to it, so it just makes sense. It's also right on Highway 50, it's on the rail. There's just a lot of advantages to locating out in that industrial park. And fortunately, we've been able to submit 2 prospects have been submitted parcels on that property now. And we want to say a very sincere thank you to Jim Moore and Billy Brenton with TP&L. They've been tremendous partners really since the day they got here, but they've absolutely been tremendous partners in helping us with the recruitment of additional industry. And we've been very busy again, no surprise there. And we have continued to have childcare discussions. We did submit a grant request to a large charitable foundation and are waiting for that response. I believe they're anticipating having word back to us by June 1st, if not sooner than that. And there are some additional opportunities to pick up some corporate funding outside of the charitable funding as well. So we're awaiting that news. We do also have a request out for the building that we're hoping to be able to reuse in the community to serve as the primary executive offices and child care center. And we're waiting to hear back from them as far as how we'll be able to do that. I will be out of the office on Thursday and Friday of this week, attending an Opportunity Zone conference in Denver. There has been additional IRS guidance that has just recently been released, and this conference is actually being sponsored through one of those companies that manages a lot of these incentive programs. So they're providing us with an overview of what that guidance means to us and how we can incorporate it into the opportunity zones we have in our communities. As a reminder, we do have 2 census tracts that are located within the opportunity zones. That was a competitive process. There were 760 census tracts in the state of Kansas that were eligible to be opportunity zones. The governor was only allowed to select 70 of those and submit those to the federal government. We were able to secure 2 of those census tracts. 2 of the 70 are in Finney County. And upcoming events, we do have the Friends of Buffalo Dunes fundraiser kickoff golf tournament coming up in May. So we hope you'll be able to take part in that. And that is all I have for you regarding your report, unless you have questions.
Any questions? Might add, it's been rather busy and a little hectic around the office. We did have a very good luncheon last week with Prospect Birmingham, and hopefully there'll be some announcements and consideration on that in the near future. A lot of other things going on around there, so it's I'd say quite busy. So, Nicole, tell us about workforce and whatever else.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
As Steve mentioned, the student job fair is today at Garden City High School. In about an hour it starts. It runs till about 11:45. I'm not sure on what they have as far as employers. I didn't get the final count, but as mentioned last month, this was requested by the students to do a job fair for them. So we've got kids that are out there looking for jobs, and so I think that's good. Also had a meeting this month with Tracy Martinez. Tracy heads up the JAG program at the high school, and JAG stands for Jobs for America's Graduates. And yes, Tracy is Steve's daughter. We won't hold that against her. But
I feel sorry for
I
her.
know, right? We had a really good meeting with her, and she kind of just gave me a little background on the program and what they do. And the JAG program deals with kids that have a barrier to graduation, and sometimes that barrier isn't necessarily grades. Sometimes it's social issues, whether it be they have a 40-hour-week job because they're helping pay bills at home, or just a lot of interesting situations like this. But from what I gathered, these kids are very motivated. They do understand that they're motivated to get the job. Some of them know that they can go on to college. Others know that maybe there's a financial barrier to college, and so they already get it through their mind that they need to enter the workforce, and so they need to do what they need to do during high school or those first 2 years of junior college to get them a good paying job and get into the workforce. We actually targeted this group because they're a little bit smaller group to take the job shadow survey. So we had them take that about 2 weeks ago. Had 100% participation from them. The kids at Holcomb also took the survey. So it was 69 surveys, we had 69 responses, and we had 67 job shadows that came out of that. So
Wow, that's pretty
we were
good.
kind of thinking if we got 30, we'd be doing good. So I think we knocked it out of the park on that one. We will be reporting that data back to the large group for the Workforce Connection and working with Workforce One to get those kids placed if it's possible. A lot of them were seniors this year, so that's going to be a little bit tough to get a job shadow, but we can still do it during the summer. That's not a huge deal. But depending on what their schedules are, we'll work with them to see if we can get them a job shadow. With that conversation also came another conversation with Michael Stewart, who heads up the Boy Scouts here in town, and they do an exploring program, which is basically job shadowing. But the Boy Scouts have developed the curriculum that goes with, like, there's 20 some odd programs that they can do. So he's graciously allowed us to use those programs if we would like to. Go to the employers and say, hey, we have this curriculum that we can set up for you with this exploring program, and see. I think theirs runs about 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes some of these kids just want a job shadow maybe an afternoon, but if they truly get interested in that career, they can do a 6 to 8 week, couple hours a day or couple hours a week, whatever they want to do to get that program going. We had the Education Task Force, we'd probably call it something else, but Bob Kreitzer called the meeting, and we had a really good turnout at the college between education and employers and community organizations. And for us, a win was we got Holcomb in the room and reached out to their superintendent, and they are very excited about developing their Oath Youth Development Council. So we're going to work with them on getting that going in the Holcomb school system. As far as workforce development, I continue to work with Tech Ed. It seems to be, we just do more and more things together. It seems to be a good partnership. Chuck and I are working on an actual formal agreement that outlines the things that they expect from us, the things that we expect from them, so that on a yearly basis we can go and evaluate this to determine whether or not
Accomplish it.
what we're accomplishing. So Chuck and I are working on that, and back on childcare, they are working on getting the early childhood education program put back in at the college. So we have been gathering some needs assessment data that they need. They're going to go after some Perkins money for it. So we've been surveying current providers in the community, as well as the kids that are in the early childhood education pathway at the high school, to see their need, whether or not they intend to stay in that pathway, what type of education they would like. So we're getting those survey results back, and we'll have that to check by early May so he can get his grant request put together for the Perkins program, but it seems to be moving forward nicely. That's it. Do you guys have questions?
Questions? I would like to add that Bob did host and present and chair a very good meeting last week. Discussion was really good. Participation was amazing, that you could get all of the educators and the people that we had. We had the superintendent of schools in Garden City, the superintendent of Holcomb, president of the community college, staff from each of the different districts and college, and it was very well, Bob. I think it was something to be really congratulated on. It was very good. So
Well, I think the opportunity and the need is certainly there. And when we visited with one of the prospects the day before that, and one of their major concerns was, where are they going to get employees? And I think everybody that gathered in that room, and it was not only the educators, it was the county administrator and 2 department heads, and the city manager and the mayor and another commissioner, and the chamber and Downtown Vision and Workforce One and several of their entities. I mean, everybody came to the table and they were open and excited about doing something, and it was really interesting. Mr. Nordby, the principal at the high school, says, when we were doing building bridges, it was good because students kind of got to see what the business community did, but they need to expand that, and I think that'll kind of be our next step, will be to get with the Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Vision and try to get all of those employers to interact with the educational professionals and find a way to show the students the different pathways. What are they and what could they mean to you? Because, boy, we're missing an awful lot of talent that comes out of the high school that doesn't go on to college. And we've got to find a home for them and show them that not only is it a great opportunity in high-paying jobs and high demand, but also that it's socially acceptable not to go to college. There's been this adage that, all our kids are going to go to college, and it's just not real. And boy, there's some great opportunities. So I tell you, the opportunity that our community took to come together, it was just absolutely amazing. It was good.
it was very good. I think you'll see some really great things come out of this, and of course, you may or may not know that Bob sits on the Governor's Council for Education, and I think that's probably where he's headed when he gets through here, is to take his results and share them with the people that have the power and the ability to make these things move forward. So good luck with that, Bob.
Thanks.
Scott, tell us about Greater Garden City.
Good morning. The GreaterGardenCity.com website had about 5,000 visits this month, which is pretty typical for an average month. If you look down in the Facebook pages, you'll see that the journal page had a 128,000 average post reach and 70,000 average post engagement. That number is not a typo. It's correct. It's just that it was skewed by our Shannon's April Fool's Day post, in which he announced that Olive Garden was building the world's largest olive garden at the side of the big pool.
So we're not getting.
So that wasn't true?
Fake news, I guess.
So we're not getting an Olive
We're not
Garden
getting
in
that,
place
no.
of the big pool,
No.
huh?
To put that in perspective, the normal reach and engagement for the journal page is around 19,000 and 11,000. So basically, alone, that post reached about 125,000 people. It went through their Facebook feeds somehow, wherever they are, and was clicked on nearly 57,000 times and drew 8,000 likes, comments, or shares. So that was kind of the highlight of this month for us.
So that is a sign that somebody's looking at it.
In fact, Shannon, didn't you send something to Olive Garden kind of pointing out how successful that post was?
We actually did relay
The fact.
The results?
The community had. To Olive Garden to let them know, hey, I mean, people are excited about you. I mean,
Maybe not the big
not
pool,
specifically
but-
this idea, but about the company. I mean, It does give way to the idea about how much
To the
support
need,
that there is in
Yes.
this community for Olive Garden.
Definitely. Other posts that were popular were information about the city's spring cleanup, a story about the college's John Deere and automotive technology programs, and a post about Horace Good Middle School's mentoring class raising money for the Finney County Humane Society. But other than that, it was the giant Olive Garden April Fool's Day joke. Any questions about that?
Maybe they'll take heed to that and say, boy, this is really something we need to get out there. So, any questions for Scott or comments or anything?
Thank you. Good job.
Keep it up, Scott. I think it looks like things are really, really working well there, so. Shannon,
Actually,
Or- yes, ma'am.
directors, I have asked Shannon if he would be willing to yield his time for his report this month. Quite frankly, everything he's worked on in the past month has been specific project related, and those projects are still confidential. So there's not a lot we could show you as far as the work he's done over the past month. And beyond that, we know that we have some time constraints, and we certainly wanted to give you the opportunity to get onto the new business and give you plenty of time. So if he's okay with yielding his time and you're okay with him yielding his time, we would be happy to do so.
so outside of the Olive Garden, we'll just go ahead and, all right, we'll move forward with that. Item of new business is, it's budget time again, and I think you got the proposed budget that Finance Committee worked on. Bill and Bob and I met and worked on this budget, and have came up with what we consider to be a workable budget, and are willing to take to our partners. And in that, you'll see there are some there are some significant changes, and with that, I asked Lana if she would put together some information of kind of where we've been. You know, we separated from the chamber in 2007, and kind of sat stagnant for about 3 or 4 years. But when we left the chamber, we had a pool of money that came with us that was about $100,000 that was contributed by the City of Garden City, Finney County, and the community college. At that time, the City of Holcomb was not a partner, and they came in a couple of years later, so they added to it after that. But our original funding source was our 3 partners, and we have been moving forward from there. So with that, I asked Lana if she would kind of put together a summary of, you know, the projects that we actually have worked on and completed since 2011. Now, and the reason I started 2011, that's basically when our current administration took over, and when several of us on this board actually were seated. So you can see the projects there that have been put together, and the projects that a lot of our time has been spent on, and a lot of our resources have gone into making these things happen. So with that, I'll ask Bob if he would kind of go over the budget that we put together, and proposed budget that we present to our board, and ultimately will present to our partners if it's accepted by this board.
Thanks, Tom. What we basically looked at, number one, the document that has a narrative about all the different sites, I think it's tremendous information because it gives more in detail of what it's meant to the city and the county in terms of tax development. When we looked at the operating budget, basically, we've been tracking year after year after year our operational costs in terms of what we do, in terms of marketing and product development, workforce development. And we have been operating with basically the same number of people with just different hats that they've moved across. And we really believe that we've done a good job of maintaining expense control. And as Tom mentioned, we started with a pool of money, and through the years, operationally wise, we've been able to almost get by, but each year we had to take some of the money out of that reserve pot and pay it off. And it's going to be depleted this year. And as we look forward, we need to say, all right, we need to be able to pay our bills. And we need to look at various funding sources, but bottom line, if we have to rely on just our 4 funding partners, we would need to increase our contribution from those partners as we look at this sheet on the top lines where we had budgeted for 2019, as an example from Finney County. We would be asking for an increase of $50,000 from Finney County, from 165 to 215. From the city of Garden City, we would also ask for an increase of $50,000. From the city of Holcomb, we would ask for 5,000 from 25 going up to 30. And the community college would stay the way they are. Now, the contract services is another thing that we have found. We created this whole concept with the idea that the cities and counties would perhaps use our expertise, our strategic analysis, and fund back some of these. And the city has done that, but the county at this point in time has elected to go to outside third-party consultants, and evidently with the idea that they're from out of town and an expert, so they must be more valuable. But anyway, that's what's happening. So we have not been able to realize the gain that we had hoped. But bottom line, if we do that, and our funds that we've been able to transfer are gonna go away, we'll basically end up with just over $500,000 as our operating budget. At that level, we still project a loss of $2,000. And, you know, that's about as close as we can, and as we get down to the near end of the year, we may have to crank down a little bit so that we don't go into the red, but that's basically what it takes to balance. And so, short of coming up with a different funding mechanism, this is what we see has to happen from our partners. We have talked at different times as a board about maybe going out and providing services to various communities around us and charging for those services. Our basic funding partners, the city and the county, have been very nervous about us diluting the effort that we give to them. So they have certainly encouraged us not to do that. We're limited thereby unless we get some kind of alternative funding, be it a sales tax or some other kind of a dedicated mill levy, into doing it the way we have been structured before. And it's going to be a tough ask. And yet, by the same token, when we go to those entities and show them the impact over these last 8 years, we think we've got a great story to tell, because without the investment that they have put into economic development, we could have been in real trouble in terms of tax valuation. The oil and gas hit that our community took has been significant, not as a percentage relative to counties around us, but without the increased valuation that had been yielded, it's very, very important numbers. And also in this other packet, if you will, that was handed out, there are some charts that show you graphically, and I think a lot of times that's the key elements, that show you where we are as a percentage of the new valuation in terms of the monies we spent. And actually, we're declining as a percentage of the overall county budget, overall city budget, the money that they're investing in us. So I think we have a strong story to tell to all of these entities. But as with any other time that you go in asking for money and you kneel in front of them begging through the budget process, you've got to be able to justify who you are, because they're going to have a whole parade of people coming in with needs that are real. And we've got to go way beyond being a perceived need, and we become a critical need. So we've gone through this budget several times. We've tried to kid ourselves that we can just keep cutting things, but after a while, the last thing we can afford to cut right now, with you see all of the projects that we've got in front of us, we can't slow down. Right now, the success that the community has enjoyed has brought more situations to the front, and we have some momentum going, and we've got to be able to follow that, or we need to walk away, and I don't think any of us want to walk away. So with that being said, I would submit a motion that we submit the 2020 budget as outlined on these documents.
Okay, we've got a motion. Have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, Steve, thank you. Any discussion that we need to have? You know, I think one point
I
that,
do have,
go ahead,
is,
Ron.
Alana, are you gonna go to the different entities?
Yes, we will.
Oh, yeah,
For
absolutely.
budget
Yes,
requests?
we will.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
We've-
The board actually, quite frankly, at this point, this is about the sustenance of the organization. This organization either will continue to exist or it will not continue to exist.
Okay.
It really needs to be a function of the board of directors. You will be the spokesman for the Holcomb City Council. Obviously, we can have additional board members there for support, but quite frankly, my job is to provide you with very good data that clearly lays out what we've accomplished. This document that Bob was talking about, those are just the projects that we, as economic development, have been the primary player in. And the total of those investments has been, capital investment has been over $330 million. The new valuation that's been created, where he was talking about the real property valuation versus the oil and gas valuation, the new property valuation on those projects, with the exception of the Starbond project and the Garden City Plaza project, which have not been completed, so we don't know how they're going to impact the valuation. But just on the projects that are already in place, we've increased the valuation by $56,237,000. And also, those efforts through the Transload and through the Dairy Farmers of America plant have allowed us to leverage $6 million in state funds that otherwise would have had, for transportation improvements, that otherwise would have been paid for locally. So there are direct benefits. I would tell you that these are the very direct benefits that this corporation provides, and the work that your team does every day in the office. This is what we bring. These are numbers that are in existence because we've done our work. There are an unbelievable amount of indirect benefits, obviously, that come from every project that we land. And, you know, it's very obvious that if you wanted to say, well, but you didn't bring TJ Maxx to town. No, you're right. But we created the opportunity for them to have a need to be here. That's our job. So there are direct benefits, there are indirect benefits, there are obviously some induced benefits. Those are very difficult to quantify. We're not going to pretend that there's some magical formula that tells you exactly what we're worth. We're not going to do that. A lot of state agencies do that. I think that's always a hard sell. But these are numbers that are very, very real. We can go and touch what we've done to impact these numbers. So I think it's important that our governing bodies understand that. I don't want it to sound like they've not been supportive of us, because they absolutely have been supportive of us. Every year when we take our budget to the county commission and we explain to them, we are running out of reserves. We do not, you know, we have operated this as a private business. We have used that philosophy. We have always looked at it from the standpoint of, we have to be sure that every dollar we're leveraging is creating value. We do that. Of all of our money, less than 10% of it, 8% is dedicated to administrative costs. So 8% of that budget is actually utilized to maintain the financial records of the organization, to answer the phones, all of those things. That's 8% of our total budget. Our budget is very much dedicated, and our team is very much dedicated to the priorities that have been established for us. So we spend our time on project development, which includes new industry and business recruitment, as well as expansion of existing businesses and industry. Community development, which are the pieces that if you don't have them, you can't support the projects you're recruiting. So those include housing, childcare, all those things we do on this side that improve the quality of life and help us to attract the folks that we need in the community for workforce and so forth. And then the workforce development piece, which is really dedicated to training, recruiting, retaining, preparing our youth for the jobs that are available here, retraining adult learners who have a barrier to employment, those types of things. And then obviously the portion that we dedicate to marketing the community, which if we don't have it, we don't have any of the other. So the community marketing piece really is about telling the story of Finney County in allowing us to attract new industries, new businesses, and the fine folks they're gonna need to work within those industries. So we have operated very much as a private business. Oftentimes in public work, you find that budgets are, come December 1st, everybody looks at the budget and says, how much do we have left? Let's go figure out how we can use it this year because we said we need it this year. We've operated on a very, very different mentality and said we've always looked for cost savings and efficiencies. Unfortunately, no good deed goes unpunished, and I think that's what's happened to us at this point. They simply, they haven't kept up with inflation in our funding since 2011, let alone have they kept up with our successes and the efforts that are required of us to continue those successes at that rate. So, yes, we will certainly be there for the budget presentations, but as your staff, I would tell you, it's extremely important that you have buy-in as board members and that you're convinced that we're still doing the right things and that you're willing to tell that story to the entities you represent.
See, and she told me that she was not gonna say anything, that she was gonna let the board talk about the budget.
Thank you.
In this document.
You're welcome, Ron.
Line in this document, we ought to probably, for that Holcomb presentation, have the the nutrition type business and the lunch type deal out there.
Yeah.
Because it did have an impact on their side.
They're listed.
Going back to the WIFM principle.
Sure, and they are listed, but we will actually do a chart on
Right.
theirs that shows the jobs created and the capital investment. Yes, sir,
Right,
we
that's
can
good.
do that, certainly.
Yeah, because there, those, kind of two major projects that were placed in Holcomb, the truck stop facility with the added amenities, Sonic and Subway, those things, as well as the feed nutrition plant that was located down on the railroad right away, was a large investment out there. So we do that. Part of this problem, if you will, the reason that we need to ask for this increase now is somewhat our fault in the fact that, we've held our budget pretty flat, and we have operated in a very efficient manner. So we've not asked for these graduated increases over the years and kind of in the numbers that we probably should have, had we probably been looking at this, in the fact that we're gonna ask enough that we can maintain this reserve that we have, so we don't have these crunches anywhere. We probably would have been elevating our requests to our partners substantially over the years, but by not doing that, we've come to a point that, we took that $100,000 that we had when we left the chamber. We were able to enhance that through efficient operations up to just short of $200,000, and then over the years we have gradually used that up in our operations. So now it's time to step up and look at that. But if you look at these requests like from the city and from the county, basically, because they're our two largest funding partners. You know, we're only less than 0.4% of the total county budget, and about 0.13% of the city budget. So in reality, our requests and our operations are pretty small in the overall scheme of the whole thing. And like Lana said, you know, basically about 8% of our budget is for administration. A lot of the rest of it goes to project development, community development, marketing, and workforce. So it's pretty well spread out over the whole thing. So just points of information. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion on the budget? If not, all in favor of the motion to present this budget and accept this budget by our board, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Hearing none, we will move forward with this, and we will be showing up to present this, and Ron, I hope we can get you to work with the Holcomb Council, and we'll definitely be there to support any questions or whatever. We will work with the city and the county. College pretty
Excuse
well.
me, Mr. Chairman, I need to take off. I need to get to the high school for the job fair.
All right.
Steve is a major presenter trying to recruit
Yeah.
young students to come down and work in the jail. And,
Good luck.
thanks, Steve. Okay, that will take care of our new business. I have no old business. Do you have anything, Lana, that we need to put in? Okay, hearing none. I do need an executive session, and I'm gonna say 30 minutes. And part of it will be for client confidentiality, and part of it will be for non-elected personnel.
The first one will be for client confidentiality?
Yes, ma'am.
So I will be included in that one?
Yes, you will.
And how much time do you want for that one?
10 minutes.
Okay, and then the
and
non-elected
20
personnel?
minutes. 20 minutes for non-elected personnel.
Okay. All right.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Session.
I second it.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We will adjourn and go to executive session for 10 minutes.